Oh, welcome everyone. I am so delighted to see you today, and I can't thank you enough for joining me. So if I turn that way, it's because I'm looking at the other screen as I'm trying to bring people into the group, so I'm not ignoring you. So I am just so delighted to see you all here today and to welcome you to this values challenge for the After the Silence group. And you might be wondering, why am I doing this? So, like the vast majority of you, I have lived with alienation and estrangement for quite a long time. In fact, I think that's an understatement because I'm now in my 21st year. What I didn't know when this journey started is that actually it was in my childhood. It was in my generational family. It was in society around me. And the advent of things like the Beckhams' behaviours recently, the PT family, all of these things are starting to spill out into the outside world and making an awful lot more people go, me too, I'm in that situation. And this is why I set this group up. It's something I've been wanting to do for a very long time, but didn't really, A, have the courage, because we all have moments where our courage fails us. B, I didn't know how, so I had to go and learn. I'm not a master. I still make mistakes, so you'll have to bear with me. But what I find is that there are so many people who are terrified of speaking, terrified of saying they're in this position, don't know how to articulate it, don't know who to turn to for help. And I've spent many, many years training through grief coaching, through all of the other modalities that I now use, plus the research I've done, plus the time I've taken to be involved with Parental Alienation Awareness, the charity of which I'm now a trustee, plus the work I do with Grandchildren First, who are a working group talking about the impact on society and how that impacts our grandchildren's future lives, actually, as well as our own health and our own emotional well-being. So this values journey is actually a massive part of who we are and how we function, how we see ourselves, how we dismiss ourselves, and how we can learn to let go of the things that are not ours to carry so that we can step forward into something bigger. Well, bear with me. I'm just going to check the group and see what's happening because for some reason, oh, somebody's just joined. There we go. Bear with me a moment while that person comes in. And hopefully everybody else will see the link and they will all start coming in. I can't see you, Brett. Oh,
Hi Debbie. Yeah, I don't have video on at the minute. I'm
Brett.
I'm technically actually working at the minute, but
Okay, don't worry, that's fine. Lovely to see you. So you're the first person to enter the room, which is delightful. I think everybody's having technical troubles today, so bear with me. I've just done a short intro, so what I'm going to do is at the end of this session, I will cut all the blank spaces out and I'll get that posted up into the group so you can see everything. But just really just to give you a recap while we're waiting for others to join us. I've lived this journey. I'm now in my 21st year. Um, so I really do understand the depths of the grief we all experience and how we lose ourselves in this process. And it is very debilitating when we don't want it to be, but other people can't see it as something that disables us from living a full and healthy life. So they can't see the impact it has on us. And I'm guessing that's one of the reasons why you've stepped into this today, to understand those things that are happening for you.
Um, yes, I guess so. I mean, to be honest, I probably in a reasonably good place, I think, if that makes sense. Like, um, yeah, I guess sometimes I wish there was more that I could do, but also at the same time, I've accepted that a lot of these things are outside of my control. It's very much a long game, and I'm kind of comfortable playing the long game, just being who I am, if that makes sense. So,
That makes perfect sense, Brett. And there are so many people that are in a similar place to you, where they've had to accept the situation, not because they wanted to, but actually because it was the healthiest option to take for them and how they present themselves to their children if and when they see them. Or, like you say, playing the long game and ensuring that they are well and healthy,
yes,
emotionally well and healthy. When I started this journey 21 years ago, I was already very emotionally damaged because of the level of what was going on in the marriage. And so I was very vulnerable, and my grief spilled out everywhere. It spilled out into every part of my life, but I didn't understand that. And nobody around me understood it. Everybody just kept telling me to pull myself together and to grow up and stop being emotional and all of these things. But actually, I needed to do those things to keep myself alive. But
yeah,
people
of
couldn't
course,
understand that. And when you're in the depths of the deepest emotions, it's very hard to keep yourself on track, and when there is no one around you that's actually listening to you, that makes it so much harder. So, doing the grief training and doing all of the many years of research I've done, connecting with all of the bigger voices in the world who talk about alienation and estrangement in such depth, has given me a breadth of knowledge and understanding that has really helped me to create what I'm doing today and do the work that I do. It's very, very important that we hear each other, that we make space for each other, because in the outside world, nobody does that. Nobody knows how to do that unless they've had similar experiences to us. And that's the biggest difference, is how I encourage all of you to take that space to find who you are in this process of alienation and estrangement, and how you steady yourself with a strong foundation so that the day that your children do come back to you, you're able to answer any questions in a really clear and healthy way. And you're also able to express clear and healthy emotions, because there are so many people that can't, or are still living in their victim. And of course, if their children come back while they're still in that place, then it's going to make for a very uneasy reunion, or actually a very difficult and unhealthy reunion.
yeah,
And this is this
100%.
yeah, this is why I've set up After the Silence. This is why I want to facilitate this wonderful workshop that I've set up, and why I'll continue to do it, because it is so, so vitally important for how we all move forward. We owe it to our children to be the most emotionally balanced and well that we can possibly be for them, because
I agree.
that's the thing that the people who are ruling who and how our children are behaving don't want.
Yeah. Well, I think we all would have said at the beginning that we would do anything for our children. I guess it's just about realizing that that is actually what we need to do, if that makes sense. So,
Absolutely, makes perfect sense. And this is why I wanted to do the work about values, because this isn't about therapy and it isn't about fixing. I can do therapy, but to therapize everything actually doesn't allow you to take ownership of what you need to do internally to make the change. And that's not my job. That's my job as a coach, is to guide you and to ask you the questions and to give you that push that makes you look deeper inside yourself and shows you the parts that you need to address, because it's not for me to do. It's for you to be able to go within and do that for yourself. This is how you understand the things that are slightly disjointed, how your mind is working to reorganize those things, and how sometimes it gets confused. You know, this thing we have in here, this brain, is a supercomputer. It absorbs absolutely everything we experience day in, day out, whether we're asleep or whether we're awake. We hear, we see, we smell, we sense, and all of those things, along with our language that we're using, our brain is listening to, our brain is absorbing. So it's going to absorb the things that aren't healthy as well as the things that are. And it doesn't know quite what to do with it all. So it just stuffs it all away in here. And then we'll have a day where things don't feel quite so good. And our brain will go, oh, I've got some of that. I'll go and find it. It brings it out and it waves it around in here. And we go, I really don't know why I'm feeling like that. That's because our brain is going, here I am, I've got some stuff for you. But it's not always the healthiest stuff. So we can feel really disjointed. And this is what happens with our values. When we experience loss, when we become disconnected, alienated, estranged, we have grief or any other emotional rupture, because we have that with our finances, with our home stability, with our work stability, with our friendships externally to our family. All of those things, they all fluctuate and change up and down. And so our compass, our internal compass, can get a bit disjointed because it doesn't quite know how to keep on track, because it's being pulled left, right, and centre. Because up here, our lovely brain is saying, well, I've got a bit of that stuffed away, and I'm just going to bring it out and show you and remind you it's there. But because it's been stuffed away in there for so long, you actually haven't got a clue why you're feeling or sensing what it is you're feeling. You just know you don't feel quite so brilliant. And that's very much what happens in our day-to-day life. Our brain, much as we love it, can get in the way quite considerably. And when we're clarifying our values, values aren't morals, they're something entirely different. They're not our goals, and they're not personality traits. They're actually the thread that sits beneath how we behave, how we align ourselves, clarity, and how, when they're misaligned, things can really feel very hard to make decisions about. So there's nothing wrong with the values that we live by, but sometimes our values can become disjointed. And when they're disjointed, if you think about a puzzle where you have two pieces of a puzzle that really look like they should fit together, but when you do try to fit them together, they just don't, but they're almost there. And that's what happens when our values become misaligned. And we have a disconnect because we're trying to stay on the straight and narrow with that value. But actually, part of us is being pulled this way and part of us is being pulled that way because we're trying to fit with everybody else's narrative. That can be as easy as becoming a people pleaser, saying yes to everyone and telling everyone, yes, I'll do that for you. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, it's all right. That time is okay. Yes, 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 yes. When actually inside, your insides are screaming, no, 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 no. Don't expect me to keep fitting into you. Give me space to fit for me. So we put parts of ourselves on one side. And those parts actually are the values that usually guide us in that straight line. And it's very, very powerful to understand how those values work, to then understand how we can give ourselves the best self-care that brings our values back into line safely, or conversely, whether we actually need to think about changing those values around a little bit and making some values more important and less important to bring that balance back. And you often hear it said, especially in the world of business, he's a money chaser, he's a money chaser. But you often find that people are constantly changing money, chasing, that's the word, chasing money all the time, are the people that often put compassion very low down on the level, because all they're about is chasing the figures, chasing the figures, chasing the figures. They don't have time to be nice. They don't have time to be polite. They don't have time to be compassionate. Whereas a great many of us, as parents and grandparents, have a need for compassion because it's the thing we would have for a child who can't do for themselves. It's the thing we would have for a sibling or a parent or a grandparent or a cousin who is having a bit of a tough time. We'd put our hands up and we'd offer help. We'd be a listening ear. We'd be the heart they need that they don't get in the outside world. So when our family is split, that value of compassion that we would naturally have gravitated toward suddenly becomes really challenged, because actually we can't be that person that we were because of the external forces that are coming to us. And so our values are such an important part of how we live healthily, how we thrive instead of striving to thrive, and how we care for ourselves in a much more profound way. And I'm following notes because I've got so much here and I don't want to go offline. So, I use a lot of NLP principles because they bring a clarity to what we do. They bring a clarity to understanding ourselves. Some of us hear, and some of us need to hear things to reinforce how we experience that and how we move forwards. Some of us have to see it written down, and we have to see the words to reinforce how that feels to us and it feels okay. And some of us actually have to express it, speak it. And then, of course, there's also that energetic feeling that we have. So whether we have a kinesthetic, which is our energy, whether we have audio, which is our hearing, whether we have auditory digital, which is what's going on into our minds, or whether we have that sense of sight, all of these things we have to be able to use in a very profound way, and we are all unique. Some of us, we have to see things first and then hear things first. Some of us, we have to sense the energy and hear the words other people are saying. Some of us have to really get inside our heads. You'll find that people who have neurodiverse excuse me, neurodiverse tendencies, whatever that neurodiversity is, often have become very cerebral and have to really think about what they're experiencing before they can even express it. So we all do it in a different way. No two people are the same, not even twins. And so we all have to learn to balance all of those senses to support our values. So if we don't understand that we have to hear everything or that we have to see everything, then again, we're pulled off course because of the expectations of others. And I think in this digital world, that's very, very clear where this digital divide is between elderly people and using apps, because they're not designed for people who've never used them before. And they're not designed for people who have to, press buttons and have to answer questions, because our older generation grew up with a blackboard and pencil and paper and conversation. There's a very different world, and it pushes the values. So instead of saying, well, I'll give this a go, they push it away. And this is what we all do when our values are pressured. And this process, this workshop, is all about being honest with yourself. It's not about rushing. It's not about analysing, because we all do a lot of that in our lives. It's also not about justification. Whatever it is you feel, whatever it is you're sensing, is perfectly right, because it's your experience, which is completely unique to you. Some people will understand parts of your experience because they will also be experiencing. But we don't all experience at the same time. We don't all experience to the same depths. And so all of these things push our values because it's the attention we give to those values. I really need to be around people. Being around people is one of the things that absolutely lifts my energy. And what about you, Brett? Is there something that really strikes you with that? Ah, you're in that workplace. I understand. It's often about, it's actually about how our body responds to what's going on in our conscious mind, because the conscious part of our mind is what is keeping us putting one foot in front of the other to please everyone else. The unconscious part of our mind is our internal compass that's going round and round and round with all of the values that we carry. So if our values are disjointed, our internal compass can go slightly off. And I wanted to share a couple of things that I have found that are so useful. So I'm going to do that now. Here we go. And you should be able to see that on the screen. So this emotional ladder is actually really, really important. Give you a guide to how to understand your values more. Because we have emotions and feelings, and those emotions and feelings don't always marry up to the reality and the facts. So we choose a reality that fits us in this moment in time. And when we choose that reality, it may not always be the right reality, depending on how we are reacting rather than responding. So when I was first going through this journey, my selected reality was what I could see in front of me, that there were three adults who were absolutely set on destroying my relationship with my daughter. I had no concept of anything else because that was the reality I could see. It was the reality I could hear. And it was what I was feeling within my body, because the language that was being used was all about separating. It was all about diminishing me and making me far more responsible than I actually was for the situation in hand. I was the bad person, and that is the story that was fed to my 14-year-old vulnerable teenager. I couldn't protect her from that because I wasn't allowed. So my reality was that I was being isolated, although that's not quite what I understood at the time, because that's how I interpreted it. I interpreted all the things I was seeing as something someone else was doing to me, which led to the assumptions that I made at the time that weren't serving me, didn't help my emotional state, and made everything much harder. The conclusions that came from that were that I was going slightly mad. That's what other people thought. And that I was talking a load of nonsense, when actually many, many years later, it's proven that everything I was saying was factual, was true. But at the time, everybody else was looking in, thinking I'd gone a little bit crazy. My beliefs were holding me in that place. My beliefs were actually forged when I was a child. And those beliefs from the experiences in my childhood were the things that kept me in that place of deep grief as I was going through those early years of divorce and separation from my only child. And the actions here, well, I took the actions that I could at the time. I didn't know how to deal with them differently. I didn't know that the language I was using wasn't helping me. I didn't know that there were other ways for me to care for myself. And nobody was giving me that support either. I had GPs telling me, oh, but when she grows up and she's done her exams, when she gets her first boyfriend, when she gets engaged, when she gets married, when she has her first child, all these things will magically disappear. And that absolutely wasn't the case. Because actually, with each of those events, I was pushed further away and further away and further away. The language became more and more aggressive, more and more destructive, and I simply didn't know how to relate to it. So you can see this ladder of how we walk ourselves into situations that actually are not that healthy for us. And we have to be looking at our language, how we accept other people's language towards us, how we process those things to see how destructive it can be. I'm going to go one deeper. I have this other wonderful image that I found, and it starts here. This is very similar to Maslow's hierarchy of values. Maslow's hierarchy is traditionally in the triangle, and it starts at the bottom with the very basics we need: food, water, roof over our head, clothing on our back, and then it goes up to the next level, and then the next level, and each part of these things creates that very strong person at the top. This is actually a really good representation of what happens when we are experiencing alienation or estrangement or both. So we become despairing, disempowered. We're experiencing grief, but a great deal of the medical world still doesn't acknowledge that actually what we're experiencing is grief. We're, in their eyes, we're depressed, we are emotionally challenged, we are living with anxiety, and they push us into their labels. And when they push us into their labels, they want us to fit their criteria. They're not looking at who we are as a human being. And so we live with all of these things: hopelessness, rejection. And yes, to some events, some levels, we do live with depression. All of these things carry us because that's where we feel we've been pushed. The next level of emotions that we're experiencing there are the sadness, the abandonment, feeling ashamed, the anxiety, and feeling unloved, unwanted. Then we become angry. There's rage. We want revenge for people treating us like this, but we don't know how to get that revenge except for shouting back. There's hatred and fear because we don't know how they're going to react. And quite frankly, when we're in that place, we often don't care until it becomes so bad that we become overwhelmed with the fear of how people are responding towards us. We have worry, pessimism, frustration, impatience, and irritation because we're feeling we're not being heard. We're sensing that people are pushing us away rather than understanding the experience that we're having. There's doubt, there's insecurity, we become lonely, there's disappointment. All of these things are the things that feed how our values work for us or against us. And then there's that neutral space where we have a happy balance. The place we want to be is we want to have hopefulness. We want to feel accepted. We want to have faith that the system is going to work well. And if you're anything like me, there have been many times when you have questioned the system. You want to feel encouraged and you want to carry a positive attitude. But that can be really, really hard if you're living with despair and disempowerment and rejection and the hopelessness that comes with the shame and the fear and, the anger at how other people are behaving around us when we can't carry ourselves safely because it feels very much like somebody is throwing arrows at us from every direction possible. There were times when I felt like I literally was surrounded by a whole pile of archers and they were all throwing different things at me and they were hitting the spot because I was so emotionally vulnerable. Nowadays, that would take quite a lot to get through. I've grown quite a thick skin, but it's through this work, through understanding how these things here affect all these beautiful parts of us here. Because we want to be empowered. We want to feel worthy. We are worthy of being valued. We have an eagerness to please. That doesn't mean to say we should be people pleasers. We want to feel at ease in our lives. And we want to feel that light-heartedness that is such an important part of who we are. We want to be able to be inspired and feel confident, take our responsibility comfortably and not like a big heavy load on our shoulders where we are literally dragging ourselves through all of these things down here. We want to have an open heart. It's what we had before all of these things started, where we welcomed people, we supported people, including the partners, the daughter and son-in-laws, the daughters and sons, all of these things that we would have done with an open heart. But when we're going through all of this, that open heart can become very closed. We want to be serene. When I first started this journey, when I first started coaching, everything I did was at breakneck speed because I didn't know anything differently. And then as I did the deep, deep work, I became slower and calmer, more precise, more clear. And it's powerful stuff when other people see it and reflect it back to you and say how proud they are of you, of the change you've made in your world, and how they can see the work you've done because you've taken ownership of who you are. For me, that was massive. When a very dear friend said to me, "You no longer need to say everything at breakneck speed. and you can take everything in a much more powerful way. I was quite gobsmacked, but it was also a measure of how much work I've done to change my emotional values and actually honour them so that there is happiness, there is gratitude, far more compassion, buckets of courage, more spiritual connection with myself. There's love and joy, passion, a freedom, a physical and emotional freedom that I didn't have for a long time. And I can be excited, just as I am sharing with you here today. So you can see from this emotional ladder how we need a good balance. We need that neutral place. And very often when we're living with estrangement and alienation, it's very, very hard for us to be in that neutral place, especially if there's someone else, for all intents and purposes, who is creating an all-out war from their side of the fence to derail us, disable us, disengage us. And we have to take that responsibility to bring ourselves back into that neutral place, into that safe place where we can manage who we are in a very healthy way. Now, the workbook that I've put together for you just has a few simple questions. And those few simple questions are really to make you start to think about what values are important to you. What things will help you to find your compass and steady your compass. Because this is a game changer. When you can see where other people are putting the pressures that I showed you in that chart just now, the pressures of their expectations on your values, you can change how you react, anger, fear, shame, to responsive, compassion, courageous, clear. Those things are very, very different. But the energy is also hugely different. When you are in a place of anger, your energy is flowing outwards. Your energy is all about putting a big boundary up out there and pushing people away, and it's all your fault, and I can't deal with that because it's all your fault. And pushing and pushing and pushing. But that anger is also holding on to your heart. It's also pulling you down within yourself and creating an anchor, and it's stopping you moving forward because you are rooted in the fear that that anger has brought. You could also be rooted in the shame, and you want to hide yourself because other people have made you feel. And actually, other people can't make you feel. It's you that is making you feel. And this is why working on our values is such an important part of who we are. Because when we know that we value honesty, clarity, connection, clear language, and clear language and clarity is slightly different, rather than anger, fear, shame, and guilt, there's a very different energy. And that energy is vital to how our body behaves. One thing I'd ask you to think about is, I'd ask you to think about how your health has been since you started this journey. What are the things that you've experienced along this journey, but you couldn't quite understand why? You were constantly getting the headaches, constantly having stomach upsets, sore throats, chest infections, any of the other number of illnesses we experience in our lives. Because another big part of what I've learned on this journey is actually how what goes on in here translates into our body. I'll tell you a couple of little stories. So in 2007, February 2007, I had emergency surgery. I nearly died for a singular gallstone. Singular gallstones are incredibly rare. I was told after my surgery by my surgeon with a big gleeful smile on his face. He'd only ever seen 2 in 24 years. And for all the work that he had been doing in that field, he explained it to me. That ball that was just shy of the size of a tennis ball was calcium. And when we are living in extreme stress and distress emotionally, our body produces calcium at speed. But there are times when our body can't expel as fast as it is creating. And for me, all of that emotion was trapped in my bile duct and in my gallbladder. So it was feeding from the bile duct straight down into the gallbladder, and the ball was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Hadn't been there very long. It had been seen by an optician in 2004. When investigated, nobody could see it because they weren't quite looking in the right place. But that last 3 years, and I left in 2005, but of course the divorce abuse carried on well past 2007, but it was at a high level of energy. And because I wasn't telling anyone what I was experiencing, and when I left after I was trying to explain what I was experiencing and I was being dismissed, I was internalizing everything. So my body just went into overdrive and created a ball of calcium until my body couldn't do it anymore and the brakes were put on, and I did a blue light journey to Reading to have this gallstone removed. When he told me that, I was quite surprised, but he reinforced it. You have been under extreme duress. Well, I sort of felt I had been, but I didn't know how to explain it. Your body has done this. I've only ever seen 2 in 24 years. So emotionally and physically, somewhere along the way, you have been resilient enough to withstand because your body wasn't able to let go. That was a massive learning. And it was long before I did the grief work, before I truly understood why my body was doing that. And then as I did my grief training, I had developed underneath this gallstone, I had developed fibromyalgia. And it was disabling me. It was stopping me from living my life. I was walking around with 2 walking sticks because I couldn't walk safely on my own. If I walked down the road with my partner, I had to hold on to him. All of these things became disabling. And again, autoimmune conditions are heightened by emotional stress and distress. When I actually did the grief training and I learned about the things I was carrying emotionally and then learned how to let go of them, how to acknowledge where I was at fault and where I wasn't at fault, that all changed. And it was my first journey through understanding values, truly understanding the things that mattered to me and the things that didn't. And as I did that work, the fibromyalgia changed considerably. And I had a life back that I hadn't known for some years. And so when we can understand the values that we are living by and how they are challenged by the external forces, and how we challenge them ourselves with our own beliefs that may not serve us, we can create a healthy space for them to look after us and support us and care for us. So this first part of the journey in your workbook is going to be about looking at some of the words, some of the values that we hold on to. I've got groups of words that I've set up for you. Just going to read them through so that you can have an idea of the sorts of things. Safety, stability, security, belonging, loyalty, responsibility, freedom, independence, autonomy, choice, self-direction, compassion, kindness, connection, empathy, understanding, growth, learning, development, progress, purpose, and meaning. And there are a great deal more words in those groups. I've just read a few from each group for you, because I want you to start looking at the things that you hold dearest to you, that allow you to live well every day, or are impacting you to not feel so comfortable. Now, I hope that there's been interest, that things that you've learned today, and I will share these things with you, and I will share these 2 emotional ladders with you in your workbook. And I want you to just take a little bit of time for yourself to think about the things you value. Is it truth? Is it honesty? Is it commitment? Is it compassion? Is it reality? Is it self-respect, self-care? Is it how you grow? All of these things are important. You know, do you go and do exercise? Or do you not value your body enough to give it that extra care? Is it the language you use when you're talking with people? Or are you not sure of the language you're using? Because when I talk about language, I talk about how we keep ourselves in that place of victim, or how we take ourselves into that place of optimist, how we look forward rather than looking back. Because when we can take those steps to look forward, that allows us to create a powerful future. But if we're constantly going backwards into that place behind us that we've already been in, that we don't want to be in, then it's a little bit like wearing a ball and chain. And actually, this journey is about letting go of the balls and chains, because you don't deserve those. You deserve so much more. And I'm excited to share with you how we change those things. So I'm going to draw today to a close, and I'm going to thank you all so much for attending. I know there'll be many more that couldn't attend during the day, and I hope that you'll find this replay really helpful. And we'll go from there. And I am delighted, absolutely delighted to see you all in the group and see you here today. And thank you for your time. And we will speak very, very soon. Thank you,
Thanks, Debbie.
Johnny. Thank you, Brett. Look forward to seeing you in the group. Bye-bye.